The night sky burned red with strange alien flames. Sparks jumped into the air as a massive pit of fire roared in the center of a stone arena. Around it, hundreds of tall, scaled aliens gathered, chanting in deep voices that echoed through the jungle. Their eyes glowed faintly in the dark, and their weapons beat against their armored chests in rhythm with the drums. At the very edge of the pit, suspended on a wooden frame, hung a young alien girl. Her wrists and ankles were bound with rough rope, and the heat of the fire below licked at her skin. The smell of smoke and burning wood filled her nose, choking her breath. Every heartbeat told her that her life was about to end. She had grown up hearing whispers of the fire pit of doom. It was a place of punishment, a ritual sacrifice where enemies of the tribe were turned into nothing but ash. Tonight, she was the chosen victim. She had no strength left to struggle. Her chest rose and fell rapidly as her large, bright eyes searched the crowd for even a shred of mercy, but there was none. The leader of the tribe, a massive alien warrior with horns curving like blades, raised his hand. Silence fell across the arena. His voice carried like thunder as he declared, "Tonight, her screams shall feed the fire, and her ashes will please the gods." The crowd erupted in cheers, their voices hungry for the sight of death. The girl's heart pounded faster. She pulled at her ropes until they cut into her skin, but it was useless. The fire below hissed and roared, the flames rising higher, as if they were reaching for her. Sweat dripped down her face, and she closed her eyes, whispering a final prayer. She believed it was over. The drums grew louder. The warriors moved closer, pushing the wooden frame toward the pit. Her feet were now inches from the glowing coals. Sparks burned holes in the hem of her thin clothes. She cried out in fear, and the crowd cheered louder. The heat was unbearable. She thought her skin would blister before the fire even touched her. Seconds. That was all she had left. Seconds before she became nothing but smoke. But then, something changed. The air shifted. The rhythm of the drums faltered, as though the very jungle itself was holding its breath. In the corner of her tear-filled eyes, the girl noticed a shadow moving where no shadow should be. At first, she thought it was only her imagination, a final trick of her desperate mind. But then the sound came, footsteps, steady and unshaken, echoing against the stone ground. The crowd turned their heads, hissing and muttering in confusion. Who dared to interrupt the sacred fire pit? From the darkness of the jungle path, a figure stepped into the red glow of the flames. He was not scaled. He had no horns, no claws. His skin looked pale against the firelight, and his eyes reflected a determination unlike anything the aliens had seen before. He was smaller than them, fragile in appearance, but the way he stood, it was as if the fire itself feared him. It was a human. The girl's eyes widened in shock. She had heard the legends, stories of Deathworlders, humans, creatures said to be too reckless, too dangerous, and too stubborn to ever die. Most thought they were myths, bedtime stories told to frighten children. Yet here one stood, flesh and blood, his face calm even in the middle of a hostile crowd. The tribe leader snarled and raised his blade. "Who dares disturb the sacred fire?" The human did not answer. His gaze swept over the fire pit, then locked on the girl. For a brief moment, she saw something she had not seen in anyone else's eyes that night: resolve. Not cruelty, not hunger for her death, but a promise that he would not let her burn. The crowd hissed and growled, weapons lifting. The girl shook her head in disbelief. This was madness. One human against an entire tribe? He had no chance. He would die before even reaching her. And yet, her heart skipped when he took a single step forward. The fire roared louder, the shadows danced across his face, and the arena filled with the sound of snarls and steel being drawn. The girl's breath caught in her throat. She didn't know if this strange human was her savior or just another victim. But one thing was certain, her story was not ending tonight. The fire pit crackled, hungry for her flesh, but for the first time since she was tied to the wooden frame, hope sparked inside her chest. Because when everyone else wanted her to burn, one human had appeared. And he looked ready to fight the whole world. The arena froze in silence. Every scaled head turned toward the stranger who had stepped from the shadows. The fire crackled, sparks leapt into the air, and for a long moment no one breathed. It was as though the universe itself had paused to watch what this lone figure would do. The human walked with steady steps, his boots striking the stone floor with a sound sharper than the beating drums. His clothes were torn and dusted with dirt, proof that he had traveled far. A weapon hung at his side, not the glowing blades of the aliens, nor the heavy axes they carried, but something smaller, stranger. A piece of human technology. The alien leader narrowed his glowing eyes. A death welder, he growled, his voice carrying through the crowd. I thought your kind were only rumors. The girl's breath caught. She had heard the same. Humans were spoken of as monsters or myths, creatures from a savage planet where everything tried to kill them. But now, seeing one with her own eyes, she could not decide if he was a savior or a fool. The human stopped just short of the fire pit. The heat rolled over him, but his expression never changed. His gaze swept across the crowd of aliens, hundreds of warriors armed with steel and claws, and yet his eyes carried no fear. They carried calculation, as if he was weighing every angle, every possible move. The leader sneered, stepping closer. You come here alone? Into our holy ground? Do you not see that you are surrounded? The human's lips curved into the faintest smile. I see everything. That answer alone sent ripples through the crowd. No one had ever spoken to the horned leader like that. Warriors hissed, others shouted insults, and some slammed their weapons against the ground, demanding blood. The girl, hanging above the fire pit, stared in disbelief. What was he doing? He was one man against an army. Every second he delayed only pushed her closer to the fire. She cried out, "Run! They will kill you!" But the human only glanced at her. His eyes softened for a heartbeat, and then hardened again as he looked back at the leader. I'm not here to run. The leader roared and raised his blade high. Seize him! Dozens of warriors charged at once. The arena shook beneath their armored feet, and the air filled with the screeches of war. The human moved. Not like the aliens expected, not like prey. He ducked under the first spear, grabbed the shaft, and twisted with sudden force. The alien warrior stumbled forward, and the human slammed the spear but into his chest, sending him crashing into the firelight. Before the others could react, he drew his strange weapon. It was a simple thing, a human blade, forged from steel, scarred from battles before this night. But in his hand, it became alive. He slashed, dodged, and struck with terrifying speed. Every motion was efficient, brutal, and precise. The aliens were larger, stronger, but the human was faster. He fought like a man who had survived 1,000 battles already. He didn't meet power with power, he let their weight drag them forward, then turned it against them. One warrior swung a heavy axe, and the human sidestepped, letting the weapon bury itself in the ground before kicking the alien backward into the fire pit's edge. The girl gasped. The crowd roared in shock. The leader snarled, slamming his massive horned body into the stone to silence the chaos. Enough! He is only one. End him! More warriors rushed in, this time surrounding him from all sides. The girl squeezed her eyes shut, unable to watch. The flames below crackled hungrily, waiting for both their lives. But when she opened her eyes again, she saw something she had never imagined. The human was laughing. Not loud, not mocking, just a quiet, dangerous laugh, as if he had been waiting for this moment. His eyes gleamed in the firelight. He moved again, faster than before, slipping between spears and claws. His blade struck, not to kill but to disable, cutting ropes, knocking weapons from hands, sweeping legs out from under giants. Each strike showed that this was not his first time outnumbered. He fought like someone who had been born in danger, raised by danger, and sharpened into a weapon by danger. The girl felt her fear turn into awe. For the first time, she understood the stories. Humans were not strong because of their size. They were strong because they never gave up. Because when death was inches away, they fought harder. One by one, the warriors fell back. The crowd's cheers turned into uneasy murmurs. The leader's growl deepened. The human finally stopped moving, standing in the circle of defeated warriors, chest rising and falling with calm breaths. He lifted his blade and pointed it directly at the leader. I didn't come here to bow, he said. I came here to take her back. Gasps rippled through the arena. The girl's eyes widened. No one had ever spoken those words in this place. No one had ever defied the fire pit. The leader's face twisted with rage. His horns caught the firelight as he raised his massive weapon, pointing it back at the human. Then tonight, the leader snarled, "You both burn." The drums thundered again. The crowd screamed for blood. And in the center of it all, the human stood unmoved, ready to fight an entire tribe for the life of one alien girl. For her, the fire pit was doom. But for him, it was only the beginning. The drums shook the ground as the tribe roared for battle. The fire pit hissed, throwing sparks into the air, painting the night sky red and gold. The girl hung above the flames, her skin blistering from the heat, but her eyes stayed locked on the human. He stood alone in the arena, blade in hand, surrounded by enemies who were twice his size. His breaths came slow and steady, his stance balanced like a predator ready to strike. He was not afraid. He was waiting. The leader gave a sharp command, and the warriors surged forward all at once. It was not a duel anymore. It was a storm of blades, claws, and spears crashing down on a single human. The girl cried out, "You can't fight them all." But he could. And he did. The first alien swung a heavy spear. The human bent low, the weapon slicing the air above his head, and drove his shoulder into the alien's stomach. The giant staggered back, but before he could recover, the human pivoted, kicking his legs from under him. The warrior fell with a crash, sending dust into the flames. Another charged with twin blades, moving like a whirlwind. The human caught one blade with his own and twisted, forcing the alien to stumble. With a swift elbow, he struck the warrior's jaw, knocking him into his comrades. The girl's heart raced. Each move was so sharp, so fast, she could hardly follow it. He was smaller, weaker, yet he fought with a rhythm she had never seen, like he was dancing with danger itself. But even as he moved, more warriors came. A spear cut across his arm, leaving a streak of blood. A claw raked his shoulder, tearing his shirt. He winced but did not fall. Instead, he laughed, low and defiant, as if pain only made him stronger. The crowd gasped. This was not normal. No alien they had ever fought stood like this. Humans were supposed to be fragile, yet here he was, bleeding and still standing tall, eyes burning with fire brighter than the pit itself. The leader growled and joined the fray, his massive weapon cutting through the air with enough force to split stone. The human barely dodged, the blade slamming into the ground where he had stood a second earlier. The shockwave shook the arena, dust rising around them. For a moment, the human disappeared in the haze of smoke and dust. The girl's heart sank. Had he fallen? Then, movement. Through the cloud, the human leapt, rolling across the ground and slashing his blade upward. The leader staggered back, sparks flying as steel met steel. The human strike had not cut deep, but it had left a mark, a scar across the leader's weapon. The crowd erupted in disbelief. No one had ever damaged the leader's blade. The girl's lips parted in awe. He's not just fighting. He's teaching them fear. But the odds still weighed heavy. The warriors closed in, circling him. Sweat poured down his face, blood dripping from his arm, his breaths heavier now. His body was human, fragile compared to theirs. And yet, his spirit was unbreakable. The leader snarled, raising his voice. "Break him! Tear him apart!" The warriors charged again, this time from every direction. The human's eyes darted, calculating faster than thought. He moved to the side, forcing two warriors to collide with each other. He grabbed the fallen spear from one, spinning it in his hands, and used it to block another strike. In one motion, he thrust the spear backward, knocking an attacker flat on the ground. The girl could hardly breathe. She wanted to scream for him to run, to escape, but she knew he wouldn't. This wasn't just a fight. It was a declaration: humans were not prey. Still, he was tiring. Every slash, every dodge cost him strength. His chest heaved, his step slowed. The warriors sensed it. Their snarls grew louder, their movements faster, pressing him harder against the edge of the fire pit. One misstep, and the flames would claim him too. The girl's voice rang out, desperate. "Please, don't give up." For the first time since he arrived, the human looked directly at her. Even from across the fire, she saw the firelight reflected in his eyes, unbroken, unyielding. "I don't know how to give up," he said. Then he charged. The crowd screamed as he dove into the thick of them, blade flashing, body moving with reckless fury. He fought not to win, but to survive, and survival was something humanity had mastered. He took hits, he bled, but every strike he gave was harder, sharper, filled with the weight of a species that had crawled out of death again and again. The warriors faltered. They stepped back, uncertain. Some even dropped their weapons, shaken by the realization that this human did not fear them, did not yield, did not break. The leader roared in frustration, his voice echoing across the jungle. The fire pit flared higher, shadows twisting on the walls of the arena. The girl's eyes widened as the human planted his feet firmly, blade dripping with blood and sweat. His chest rose and fell like a storm, his body trembling but his spirit blazing. This was no ordinary battle. This was a legend being born. And though he stood against impossible odds, the girl knew in that moment, this human was not fighting alone. Every scream of the crowd, every strike of his blade, every drop of his blood carried the weight of his people. Humanity itself stood in that fire pit. And they would not fall. The fire pit crackled, flames reaching hungrily for the girl's body. The human stood bleeding, sweat dripping down his face, his blade trembling in his hand. The alien warriors circled him again, snarling like predators ready to strike. But instead of charging, the human made his move. In a blur, he spun toward the wooden frame holding the girl and slashed the ropes with a single strike. Sparks leapt as the fibers snapped. The girl gasped as the bindings fell loose, and she tumbled into his arms. For a second, their eyes locked, hers wide with shock, his sharp with urgency. "Run," he said simply. Before she could respond, he leapt with her across the fire pit, landing hard on the stone floor. Shouts rose behind them as warriors roared and gave chase. The leader bellowed with fury, his voice echoing across the jungle, "Do not let them escape." The human didn't look back. He grabbed her hand and pulled her into the shadows of the jungle beyond the arena. The night swallowed them whole. The jungle was alive with sound. Strange insects hummed in the trees, their wings glowing faintly. Tall vines hung like serpents from twisted branches. The air smelled damp and heavy, filled with the cries of unseen creatures. The ground was uneven, roots clawing upward like bones waiting to trip them. The girl stumbled, unused to running barefoot through such terrain, but the human never slowed. His grip was firm, guiding her through the dark with uncanny precision. He ducked under branches, sidestepped thorned plants, and leapt over hidden pits as if he had already memorized the jungle's dangers. Behind them, alien horns blared, and the sound of armored feet pounded the earth. The hunters were coming. The girl whispered, breathless, "They will find us. They always find us." The human didn't answer. Instead, he suddenly dragged her down into a bed of thick ferns. She almost cried out, but he pressed a finger to his lips, eyes glinting in the faint starlight. Through the gaps in the leaves, she saw shadows move. A squad of warriors stomped past, their torches lighting the trees. Their claws scraped against bark, sniffing the air, growling to each other in their harsh tongue. One torch passed so close she could see the reflection of fire in its bearer's eyes. Her heart thudded painfully, louder than the drums had been. She clutched the human's arm, terrified they would both be discovered. But he didn't move. Not a breath, not a twitch. Even as insects crawled over his arm and the heat of the torches pressed down on them, he stayed still as stone. Finally, the warriors moved on, their voices fading into the night. Only then did the human exhale softly. They hunt by sound and scent. Don't speak. Don't breathe too loud. Move only when the wind covers you. The girl stared at him in wonder. How do you know this jungle? His lips curved in the faintest of smirks. I don't. But survival is the same everywhere. They moved again, crouched low this time. Every step was careful, calculated. The jungle seemed to resist them. Snakes coiled in branches, strange glowing plants releasing clouds of pollen, even the ground shifting beneath hidden roots. Yet the human always found a way. He broke a branch to test if it was hollow, tossed a stone to distract lurking beasts, and covered their tracks with handfuls of damp leaves. For the first time, the girl realized he wasn't just strong. He was clever. But the hunters were relentless. From behind, the horned leader's voice thundered again. No shadows can hide you, human. We will burn this jungle to the ground if we must. The girl's blood ran cold. She had seen the tribe do this before, setting fire to entire forests just to flush out prey. The jungle that hid them could just as easily become their tomb. The human, however, looked upward. His eyes scanned the thick canopy of vines and branches. Without hesitation, he pulled her toward the nearest tree. She froze. You can't climb that. It's impossible. Not for me, he said. In one swift move, he wrapped his arm around her waist and leapt, grabbing a low branch. Muscles strained as he hauled them both upward. The girl clung to him, heart hammering, as he climbed higher, using vines and knots in the bark as footholds. They reached a thick branch and settled there, high above the jungle floor. From this vantage, the torches below looked like a swarm of angry fireflies spreading through the trees. The hunters snarled and cursed, stabbing spears into bushes, but they never thought to look above. The girl trembled, pressing her back against the trunk. She whispered, "Why? Why did you save me? You don't even know me." The human wiped the blood from his arm, his eyes sharp but tired. Because no one deserves to burn. Not you. Not anyone. Her throat tightened. No one had ever said such words to her before. Below, the tribe leader raised his weapon to the sky, flames reflecting off his horns. Search until dawn. Tear the forest apart. Bring me their ashes. The human leaned close, his voice low and steady. Then we move before dawn. For the first time since she was tied above the fire pit, the girl felt something stronger than fear. She felt trust. Because this human was not just running. He was planning. And maybe, just maybe, he could get them both out alive. The jungle had been too quiet. The alien girl felt it first, a shift in the air, the way insects stopped buzzing, the way leaves held still as if the forest itself was holding its breath. She gripped the edge of the fallen tree they had used for shelter, her heart thumping. The human was crouched nearby, sharpening his blade with calm strokes, but his eyes flicked up the instant she tensed. "They're here," she whispered. He nodded once. "I know." The silence shattered with a horn's shriek. Shadows moved between the trees, torches blazing like fiery eyes. The tribe had found their trail. Hunters fanned out through the undergrowth, their claws scraping bark, their guttural voices calling in unison. The girl's pulse quickened. "We can't fight them again. Not all of them." The human's lips curved into a grim smile. Who said anything about fighting them the same way? Before she could ask, he grabbed her wrist and pulled her deeper into the trees. This time he didn't run straight. Instead, he wove through the jungle in strange, looping paths, doubling back, kicking moss over their footprints, snapping branches at odd angles. She realized he was building a trail of confusion, not escape. The hunter's roars grew closer. She could already see glimpses of glowing eyes between the trees. Her breath hitched, fear choking her throat. "Trust me," the human said quietly. They reached a patch of the jungle where thick roots twisted across the ground like the coils of a sleeping beast. The human knelt, running his hand across the damp earth. He moved quickly, pulling vines, setting sharp stones, even placing his own blooded cloth on a branch where it would catch the hunters' noses. The girl watched in disbelief. "You're setting traps." His voice was low but steady. "Back home, every forest, every canyon, every battlefield taught us one thing: use the world against your enemy. You don't fight the jungle. You make it fight for you." She swallowed hard. To her people, the jungle was only danger. To him, it was an ally. The first wave of hunters burst into the clearing, torches flashing, weapons raised. The human pulled the girl down into the shadows of a thick fern, his finger pressed to his lips. A warrior charged forward, stepping exactly where the human had tied a vine. The ground shifted, roots snapping, and the alien crashed into a pit of thorns hidden beneath the leaves. His scream pierced the night, cut short as the vines tightened. Another swung his spear, but the motion set loose a branch weighted with rocks. The stones slammed down, scattering the squad into chaos. The jungle echoed with snarls and curses. The girl covered her mouth to keep from gasping. "You planned all of this in minutes," he whispered. "Long enough." But the leader's roar silenced the panic. The massive horned figure stepped into the clearing, his torch blazing like a second sun. His eyes locked onto the shadows where the girl and the human hid. "You cannot run, Deathwalder," he growled. "This forest belongs to us." The human finally rose from hiding, his blade glinting faintly in the firelight. "Then maybe you should have respected it more." The leader swung his colossal weapon down with a crash that split roots apart. The girl cried out, diving aside with the human as dirt exploded around them. The ground shook, but the human used the moment, grabbing a loosened root and yanking it free. The massive chunk of earth collapsed, dragging one of the warriors down with it. The leader snarled and raised his weapon again, but this time the girl didn't just watch. She grabbed a vine the human had tied earlier and pulled it with all her strength. The trap released, dropping a bundle of sharpened branches onto another warrior. The human glanced at her, eyes widening just slightly. She had helped. She wasn't just a captive anymore. Her chest heaved, her arms trembling, but for the first time she felt the spark of defiance that burned in him. She wasn't powerless. Not while standing beside him. The clearing became chaos, hunters tangled in vines, slipping on damp roots, torches dropping and setting brush alight. Shadows flickered wildly as fire and smoke rose. The leader roared louder than them all, cutting through traps like they were toys, his massive body unstoppable. The human stepped forward, blade ready, shoulders squared. "Get ready," he murmured to the girl. "For what?" she asked, fear and adrenaline twisting her voice. His eyes glinted with fierce determination. "For the part where we stop running." The jungle burned, the hunters closed in, and the leader raised his weapon for the killing blow. But in that moment, with the fire reflecting in the human's unbroken eyes, the girl realized something terrifying. He wasn't just trying to survive anymore. He was about to turn the entire hunt against them. The jungle was fire and shadow. Torches blazed, smoke curled upward, and the cries of hunters echoed through the trees. The alien girl stood with her back pressed against a trunk, her chest rising and falling in panic. In front of her, the human planted his feet on the torn earth, his blade steady even as blood ran down his arm. The horned leader towered above him, eyes glowing with fury. "You cannot win, Deathwalder. My people outnumber you 100 to 1. Your body will burn, and your bones will feed the pit." The human's lips curled into the faintest smile. "Maybe. But tonight, I'm not the one afraid." The leader roared and swung his colossal weapon down. The human dodged, the blade cleaving through the ground where he'd stood. Dirt and sparks exploded upward. Hunters surged from all sides, snarling like wolves. The girl's scream caught in her throat. This was the end. But the human moved like lightning. He kicked a fallen torch into the dry undergrowth. Flames leapt, spreading through the jungle floor. Smoke rose, confusing the hunters. He darted between them, striking not with brute strength but with precision. Every step forced his enemies into their own chaos, claws slashing allies, torches blinding one another, spears tangling in vines. The girl watched in awe. It wasn't just his blade. The entire jungle seemed to fight with him, every trap, every flame, every shadow bending to his will. The leader snarled, smashing aside his own warriors to face the human alone. Their blades clashed, sparks flying like stars. The ground trembled with each strike, steel against steel, horned fury against human grit. The girl's heart hammered. She wanted to run, to hide, but something inside her had changed. She could no longer stand by while he risked everything. She grabbed a fallen spear and rushed forward. With shaking hands, she jammed it into the ground between two roots. The leader stumbled as his foot caught, just for a moment, but it was enough. The human seized the opening. With a roar that shook the night, he drove his blade across the leader's chest. Blood sprayed, dark and steaming in the firelight. The crowd of hunters froze. Their invincible leader staggered, his massive weapon slipping from his grip. For the first time, he looked uncertain. The human stepped forward, blade still raised. His voice was quiet but carried through the flames. "Remember this. Humans don't bow. We don't burn. We endure. The leader's knees buckled. He collapsed to the ground, his horns striking the dirt with a dull crack. A silence spread through the jungle. The hunters stared at their fallen champion, disbelief painted on every scaled face. The girl's breath came in sharp gasps. She stared at the human, bleeding, bruised, but unbroken. To her, he looked taller than the trees, brighter than the flames. The hunters began to whisper among themselves. Some dropped their weapons. Others turned and vanished into the jungle. Fear spread faster than fire. The human finally lowered his blade. His chest rose and fell in heavy breaths, sweat dripping into the dirt. He turned toward the girl. "It's over." But she shook her head. "No, it's not just over. It's something more." Her voice carried, echoing across the clearing. She stepped beside him, raising her chin toward the crowd. "This human stood against all of you. He fought fire with his bare hands. He faced your leader and won. He saved me when none of you would." She turned, her eyes burning with a fire of her own. "Is that a man or a legend?" The hunters murmured, fear turning into awe. The story was already spreading among them, whispered from one to the next. The fire pit would no longer be remembered for her death, but for the night a human defied it. The human, however, only shook his head. "I'm no legend. I'm just human." He sheathed his blade, the simple steel scarred and dull, yet still whole, like him. The girl smiled faintly. "Sometimes, that's enough." The jungle quieted again. The flames began to die, smoke rising into the night sky like a signal. Far away, more voices called, curious, uncertain. The tale was already growing, spreading beyond this tribe. Soon, the galaxy would hear of it. A girl once seconds away from the fire pit of doom. A human who appeared when no one else would. And a battle that proved humanity was not just another species, but something the galaxy would never forget. The human glanced toward the stars, eyes distant, as though already thinking of the next fight, the next impossible survival. The girl followed his gaze, her heart steady now. For the first time, she believed she had a future. Because she had seen what humanity truly was. Not prey. Not myth. Not weak. But unyielding.